Hey guys, welcome back to our market update for September 2023. We're joined with Patti Martin. How you doing, Patti?
I'm good. How are you, Adam?
I'm doing well. We have a very interesting market update because this was supposed to be the market update to decide how the market was going to go into fall and then winter, coming off a pretty active spring summer market. How do you feel the market is going, Patti?
Exactly the direction that we've been talking about for the last couple of months. So, still active. There's still buyers out there. There's still people buying. Sellers are selling. There's just less activity on the things that are available.
Yeah, so the real estate board has come out and said the month-over-month price gains seen earlier this year abated in Metro Vancouver. So pricing is softening potentially, and the housing market in September has become more seasonally normal. When we look at home sales, the region, so in all of Metro Vancouver, there was 1,926 sales in September, a 13% increase from September 2022, but 26% below the 10-year average.
That's because there's no inventory.
So I want to look into this one a little bit more just to give some context here. If we look at August sales, there was 2,296 sales. Month over month, it actually dropped 16%. Okay.
Hmm.
When we look in the past 3 years, we haven't seen sales below the 2,000 like units for the month, um, except for about four times or so in the past 3 years. And those times were July 2022 to February 2023. We had every month was below 2,000 sales. So that was an 8 month span. And then from April 2020 to June 2020, it was below the 2,000 sales in a month um, quantity as well because of COVID.
Okay.
So I guess what I'm trying to say here is below 2,000 sales in a month isn't too abnormal in the past 3 years.
Right. Look, there are people, we have buyers that are just waiting, that we can't find stuff for, that would buy and create more sales if there was more inventory. There just isn't enough inventory for what people want.
Yeah, and that brings us to our next point when we're talking about the real estate board here. They go, the reluctance of some homeowners to list their home, given that mortgage rates are the highest they've been in over 10 years, has created a scenario where inventory levels have remained low, which has led to price increases through the spring and summer months. So we're feeling those effects. Wouldn't you agree?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. But it's interesting because if you look at, so, I mean, I was just at a conference where they were talking, an economist from CIBC was talking. First off, he's predicting that the Bank of Canada will raise the rate one more time at the end of October. So it remains to be seen, but it sounds like a possibility. He said that we're moving out of inflation and into a very quick recession, probably the next 6 months. He talked about things that are indicators. So one of them was the consumer has kept us out of recession for the last couple of years because there was a lot of money that was sort of sitting around post COVID. People hadn't spent a lot
Yeah, they had
and
larger savings.
they had larger savings, but all of that money is gone now. So he says that is a non-starter now. There's none of that protection. Um, Supply chain has problems have disappeared. So that means that profit margins are down. That means that um, places that are just normal stores selling things aren't as busy. They have more inventory to manage, and so their costs are higher. And so he really feels that this is the way that the world is going, that by mid next year, the rates will start to come down. And then that's when he sees um, much more pressure on the housing market again.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting time. if inventory stays low and interest rates come down, then I think buyers will be in for trouble. I think
Yeah.
it's going to be extremely, extremely difficult. Um, but let's keep it focused on September 2023. We'll just try to extrapolate a little bit about what this means for the future. Um, New homes to market. So there was 5,446 properties newly listed for sale on the MLS. It was a 28.4% increase compared to the 4,200 homes listed in September 2022.
Mm-hmm.
So newly listed homes, there's more coming to the market. When we look at August newly listed homes, it was just under 4,000, and now we're sitting at 5,400, give or take. So that's a 38% increase in homes newly listed for sale.
Which,
Again, I know,
just hang tight though for a sec. There are not that many people list their houses in August because they're kind of busy doing other summer things. So it's quite normal that we would see an increase in inventory to some degree in September over August.
well, I have two questions here because this is what the stats don't tell us. I wanted to see how many of these listings were actually recycled. So it's a stat that our system simply doesn't spit out.
Yeah.
But when I look back over a 5 year period, uh, there actually a 10-year period. So there's only 12 times in a 10-year period where the new homes listed on market were over 6,000. Four of those times were March to June in 2021. And then you had three of those times that were March to May in 2022. So seven of the 12 times that we had over 6,000 new listings in a month were pretty much in the past 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought
Mm-hmm.
it was quite interesting. So this 5,000 listings coming to the market, it's 5% below the 10-year average, which means sellers are, I mean, it's low, but they're starting to act a little bit more normal.
Yeah. Both times, both of those, was it 5 times you said?
Uh,
you,
it
you're throwing a
was
lot of numbers at me.
four times from March to June 2021, three times from March to May 2022.
Right. And both times are still affected by COVID.
Yes.
And bored homeowners who have nothing else to do but think about selling their
Yeah.
houses and moving. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's where we were. So that is not a surprise. And we all know that we were all really busy during COVID because it was a safe way to entertain yourself moving. you
Finding that
you
bigger
didn't need
space in the
other
home
people.
office.
You didn't
No.
need other people, and you might have gotten really bored with your surroundings. Um, it, Look, at the end of the day, right now, everything is perfectly fine. It's a softer market, so for buyers, for heaven's sakes, get off the fence, take a short-term mortgage, and then take a good look at that in another 6 months to a year about refinancing and getting a better rate. For the sellers, depending on what you're doing, you may want to wait for a busier market. It's still the problem of buying and selling at the same time. So if you're cashing out and moving to the Bahamas and going to rent for the rest of your life, well, you might want to wait for a more advantageous time. But if all you're doing is moving in the same market, then same thing. It's going to be harder to buy in a year to a year and a half again.
If the rates come down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's if you're keeping the money in the same market, it's okay, let's say you sell for a little bit less because there's a little bit less activity. That hopefully translates the same when you go and buy. Hopefully there's again a little bit less activity and hopefully you can buy at a little bit of a discount or at least have subjects to make a safe purchase. As long as you're keeping money in the same market and not moving to the Bahamas, it will work itself out. Like you're never going to be the highest. You're probably never going to be the lowest.
I always like to think too, you really want to be moving when it's right for you. And everything else kind of works itself out. Because if you're selling high, you're probably going to buy high. And if you're selling lower, you're going to reap the benefit of that when you purchase. So if you're already in the market, it's not a problem. And for buyers right now, this is the first time in probably a year to a year and a half where you actually are maybe not competing in some of these offers, that you actually might be the only offer writing. We've seen that twice last week, right? We had 2 offers on 2 different properties where we only had 1 offer on each property. And that's
Yeah.
the first time that's happened in a long time. We're spoiled. We're like looking for the 4 or 5 offers. We knew it was coming, but here we are. Now,
And that's
people
that's the hesitancy, right? That's the short-term hesitancy from the buyers. I think buyers right now are quite optimistic long-term about the market. Everybody can see that when rates come down, there's still no inventory, and we're not building at a rate that we need. But short-term, it's extremely expensive, and so that's where you're kind of seeing it.
Yeah, it's just that if you wait, the interest rate might come down, but it might cost you more, and that's the likelihood.
So that's a good segue to get into the total amount of inventory, because once we talk about total amount of inventory, we can talk about sales to active ratios and then days on market, and we can use this as an indicator of kind of what's happening short term, and then potentially hypothesize about what's coming up long term. So across all property types, the sales to active ratio in the market is 17.7%. So we're below that 20%, meaning in general, it's a balanced market in general. By property type, detached homes were 12.6% sales to active listing ratio, townhomes 21.6%, and apartments were 21.3%.
It's interesting, Adam, because where you see the most inventory in the last little while coming up is in townhouses and apartments. So my prediction is that will change in the next month or so. That listing to sale ratio will change because there's a significant amount of more inventory coming out in apartments and townhouses than there was in the past few months. And that buyer is the one that's most sensitive, that first time buyer, because they're really afraid of the rates.
Yeah, no, I see that. When we look more at the active listing ratios, comparing it to August, so in August, detached was 14%, now we're at 12.6%, so that's a drop in 10%. Townhouses were 30.3%, currently sitting at 21%, so there's a drop in 28% sales to active listing ratios. And condos, similar, it was 31.9%, and now we're sitting at 21.3%, so there's a drop in active listing ratios of 33%. So my question, Patti, is we're seeing this drop. The past 5 months, it's been a drop and a drop and a drop and a drop. Is this the bottom? Like, is this a good time for buyers to go, you know what, if I can afford it, it's the bottom, the prices are down, other buyers are on the sidelines, I should jump in? Like, what do we call the bottom right now?
Oh my God, I have a really big secret. Only one person is the bottom out of everyone. So it's pretty hard to time that, right? Only one person sells for the top, and only one person buys at the bottom before it changes, right?
Yeah, again, it goes back to
my message is always has been, what's going on in your life? Is it the right time to buy, or is it the right time to sell? And let us worry about the details of how that works for you, and point out to you whether it's an advantage or disadvantage. I would say that as long as you're buying and selling in the same market, it isn't. And I would say right now that, as I said earlier, there hasn't been a time when we haven't seen a lot of offers on a single property for a while. And so it gives the buyer a real advantage right now. And so I couldn't say it's the bottom, but I could say that if you're not competing, you have a better chance. If you're not competing against a lot of offers, you have a better chance of securing the property at a price that you're comfortable with.
and advantageous terms. Like you could actually have an inspection, take your
Right.
time, do the proper due
Yeah.
diligence,
Oh, yeah.
and you're not
Yeah, that's a
dependent
good point.
on like the rescission period. So sometimes the best thing about like a balance or a buyer's market is not necessarily the price reduction. Sometimes it's your safety nets and the fact that you can buy something with subject.
So it's a really good point because in the multiple offer scenarios that we're still seeing, everybody has subjects again,
Yes.
right? So
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's
that
true.
non-subject offer almost doesn't exist. There's still a few.
Correct.
We had one last week, but um, it almost doesn't exist.
When so the board has come out and said that this upward shift in new listings has allowed the overall inventory levels to recover modestly from the low levels we saw earlier this year, and the outcome has been a more balanced market conditions overall. So they haven't come out and said it's the bottom or things are going to get worse or anything like that. They're staying quite politically correct and saying it's a balanced market.
Well, because they
When I
don't
look
know.
back, oh, of course,
Nobody
I mean you can't
knows.
judge one way or another.
No, no, because
Just
we talked about this before we started, but like there's a lot of unknowns that could affect anything that happens in the world, and so we don't know. Again, do what's right for you. Always make sure it's right
of
for
course,
you, and that's when you should be doing it, buying or selling.
when I look at um, sales to active listing ratios and I broaden it to about the 10-year term. So when I look at a 12% sales to active listing ratio for detached, I'm like that's pretty low. How many times has that happened in the past like 10 years? So historically, the sales to active listing ratio for detached properties has been around that 10-ish, 12%. Case in point, in January it was 0.9, February was 0.15, and the May, which was the peak, was 0.27. So we're trending back down towards historical normal sales to active listing ratio. When we look at townhouses, uh, above zero point 0.2 for the past decade has been quite normal. In January, it was 13%. February was 34%. May, which was the peak, was 47% sales to active listing ratio. In condos, the sales to active listing ratio is actually seldom below 20% since 2015. So in January, it was 16%, which was quite low. February was 25, and then May, which was the peak, was 44.
Again, I just don't think if you could time a market, well, if someone could time a market, they would be brilliant. But
Well, I think what this is telling you is that buyers, you have less activity out there. You have fewer sales,
for
you
sure,
have inventory numbers that are trending higher. If you are thinking about buying in the next
number of
little
people
while,
you're
like you said,
competing against
is
is
fewer.
lower.
So when you have less competition, you as a buyer have a stronger opportunity to negotiate, to get your terms that you want, to get into the market. Like it, all the indicators are there that say if you are planning to get into the market, if you're financially capable, you know the place that you want in a neighborhood that you want to get into, now's the time.
Yeah, it's just about being the right time for you. I totally believe that. So I do feel that I'm telling anyone who asks me, do not take a long-term rate. Just suffer through that higher percentage point in order to be able to renegotiate in the next year.
One more point to bring up about new inventory and things like that, and to judge how quick a market is acting is the days on market. And when we look at days on market from July 2018 to January 2020, days on market was over 20, over 20 days on market. When we look at 2023 as like a little vacuum, in January, it was 30 days on market as a median, meaning half or below, a half or above
Mm-hmm.
days on market. February, it was 14, March 13, May 10, and September, we're at 12. So you
Mm-hmm.
can see this big spike when markets kind of slow down, and then as they heat up, they drastically drop. And most of these days on markets, I would say, are fabricated by the agents. Right? They set the offer date. But I
Oh,
thought it was quite interesting
for
for one
sure.
more
But
point.
yeah.
One more point. Um, it's abnormally quick the past 5 years for days on market. Back in January 2013, the median days on market was 63.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Adam, we could return to that. We've become so accustomed to this very fast-paced market, and I can't decide if I think it's just people process faster or we're actually going to see a return to a normal, well, what I call normal, a market that we were more accustomed to, um, where we actually had a listing on the market for months at a time. I mean, by the way, the results of how many people see it are exactly the same. We used to have a listing where we showed it on average 2 to 3 times a week. And then 8 to 12 weeks later, it sold. So that would have been like 24 to 36 people coming through the listing. Now we do it in 7 days. And we, roughly, depending on the property. But we start the showings on the Thursday, Friday. We have an open house. We continue to show it through the next week, and then we look at offers on the Tuesday or the Wednesday. And probably 24 to 36 people come through your house.
So do you think that is a product of faster processing, more buyer demand,
It's more
lower
buyer demand.
inventory, or more immigration? Like the four major
It's
factors.
more buyer demand, which could be related to more immigration for sure. There's definitely more buyer demand. You're not dropping everything to go look at a house if it's going to be on the market for a couple of weeks and that. You're not doing it. The only reason we get that condensed kind of activity in a listing is because everybody knows if I don't go, it's going to be gone and I'll
Yeah,
have missed my opportunity. If they had a choice, they would not choose to do anything that quick. Nobody
yeah.
would. So it's really going to come down to how this plays out over the next 4 to 6 months. I would guess that that listings will stay on the market longer, that there'll be more chance for buyers to make up their mind. There will continue to be less sellers than normal because people don't know where they're going and they don't see a lot of inventory or choice that makes sense to them. So I don't think we're going to see a really big change in the market, but I do think the buyers are going to have a little more room to secure a property that they like.
Well, that is probably a welcome change for a large portion of the market.
Mm-hmm.
There you
Yeah.
go. I think that's our crystal ball.
We'll see if we're right.
We'll see if we're right. I think that's a good place to stop. That's a lot of information for our viewers to digest. If anybody wants to get a hold of myself or Patti, there's a link to our contact information in the description below. We're always here to answer any of your questions and advise how you should navigate this ever-changing market.